Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Eerie International, episode 492 this week. My name is David from the United States.
I'm Andi from Germany.
And I'm Dave from the UK.
And we are reunited to talk about Habit, the 1997 vampire horror film from Larry Fessenden. Very excited to talk about this movie. But before that, welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, we are a horror podcast that talks about horror stuff in a variety of mediums. This week it's film. Sometimes it's TV shows or books or podcasts or audio narratives, stage plays, musicals, all kinds of shit. If we're into it, if it's horror, we'll talk about it. Feel slightly self-conscious for swearing this early on in the podcast and in the intro, but here we are. It came out very naturally. You can find us online wherever you found us. Subscribe. Everything's free. We also are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Eerie International. Give us a follow. Instagram's usually the most active. We'll post what we've got coming out and upcoming episodes and all that jazz. We also have a Gmail account. If you'd like to send us some longer form thoughts in the form of an email, feel free to do so, eerieinternational@gmail.com. We do have a quick email this week from our friend Smart Otaku. Hello, Eerie International. This is Smart Otaku here to say hello and see how you all are doing. I've been through a bit, but I'm doing good. The long and short of it is that I had a lot of plans and personal projects set up, and they all pretty much fell apart. I've been busy putting the pieces back together since I last wrote in, and thankfully I'm getting back on track. I'm going to pause there just to say, I don't want to speak for Dave and Andi, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like all three of us know that feeling exactly. I think we've all talked about it. Yeah, so we are right there with you in support and in empathy. Back to the email. Anyway, I don't have much to share this time around, but I thought I should warn you guys about what's been happening with the Amazing Digital Circus. I'll cut in there again just to say, this is David, that we did an episode over the Amazing Digital Circus. It was a combo episode over the first 2 or 3 episodes of the web series, along with the short story, I Have No Mouth and I'm a Scream by Harlan Ellison. If you go back, I don't know, a month or 2 back maybe, there's an episode there that you should listen to. And at the time when we recorded it, there were 2 episodes left. One has since come out, and then the final episode was supposed to be released in theaters. It still is going to be released in theaters in the U.S. and different, I guess, internationally too, and in different places that are doing it.
Sorry to interrupt. So is it not out for you in cinemas for you? Because it is. Maybe I did see it in our program. Maybe it was they already listed it, but it isn't out yet. I might have confused that. I thought it was out because it is in the. Because when you go to the website, it just lists all the movies that are playing. But maybe I didn't look at the specific date. Maybe they're already selling tickets, and that's why it is in the listing. Yeah. Okay, I see.
That's what it is here anyway. Because they bundled together. Because I looked at it, I was going to maybe try to go see it, and then I went and saw James Cameron's new film, which is actually Billie Eilish's new film, a few weeks ago. And sent you guys, they had a cardboard standee thing in the theater for it, which surprised me. I was like, oh shit, there's they've printed promotional material for this thing. And yeah, but when I looked it up, my memory, and I just reconfirmed, is that it was basically going to be playing right when I'm in Maine, here in a couple weeks, out of state entirely. So I wasn't going to be able to go see it. So I think it's like beginning of June. But and the way that they were going to release it in theaters, from what I read, is that they were bundling episodes 8 and 9, which are the final 2 episodes, together, and then maybe some like behind the scenes. So it ended up being like a 90-minute runtime with everything included. But we have some developments. Back to Smart Otaku's email. So back in April, it was announced that the movie finale for the Amazing Digital Circus would be screened in theaters worldwide. Since then, many of those theaters have sadly canceled their screenings, and the finale got leaked in its entirety. Everywhere you go, and I do mean everywhere, it's just spoilers for the finale, and the community is in chaos. Until it's released on YouTube in June, I suggest keeping away from anything relating to the Amazing Digital Circus. That's about it for me. I don't like being the bearer of bad news, but I figured you guys would want to know if you didn't already. Until next time, take care. Smart Otaku, as always, thank you for writing in. Please continue to do so. We love hearing from you. And this was something that was on my radar a bit already, because I was very into that show, got pretty sucked into it. I brought it to the podcast as an option to do with the Harlan Ellison short story. So it's been on my radar and kind of on my periphery. And even back then, I may have mentioned this on the episode, but even back then, I noticed like this fandom's a little toxic. Like there's some bullshit going down for sure. There was a lot of stuff I saw with specifically Gooseworks, like the kind of the main creative driving force behind it. They had posted some things on social media that were very sort of dire and depressing, of just kind of like, this was something that was supposed to be, very, I'm paraphrasing different tweets I saw, but like this was supposed to be something that was very positive, and now like it is completely just sucked all of the energy and life out of me, and like I regret it. Like it was a lot of stuff like that, and a big part of it was the community piling on, and just not everyone obviously, but like definitely a specific subset, toxic fandom, people that are antagonistically trying to be trolls. They just bullshit. That was back then. So here recently, yeah, I had landed on my radar a bit too before the email even, which I could tell like, okay, something got leaked. I didn't realize until a Smart Otaku's email that it was the entire thing. So it's just a bummer because it I don't know, man. The more I don't want to go off on a bunch of tangents, but I was talking to Dave about this off air earlier this week. Like there's just, it seems like so many more and more fandoms, it feels like popping up now, where it's just this whole, I would argue that it's like we could trace part of it back to fandoms having too much power historically in more recent years. Like the Snyder Cut, like the Sonic the Hedgehog thing. Like it's not all exactly the same, but stuff where fandoms were very vocal, maybe for positive, worthwhile reasons, maybe not. And then change happened after that because of it. But Stranger Things was with it this way. The Boys was this way. This thing now with Amazing Digital Circus, like this mentality right now that like, we know better, or it should have been this way, and not letting creative people create and do their thing. If you don't like it, if you wish they would have done it a different way, that fucking sucks. Grow up and move on. Like there's plenty of shit I've watched or read that didn't end the way that I liked it, and I could discuss it with my friends. I could process that, whatever. The end. But anyway, I won't go deep into that tangent. I dipped into it a little bit, but that is one thing that's been driving me crazy about this Amazing Digital Circus stuff, especially it being such a unique and cool sort of thing that, came out of a non-traditional medium and has had this levels of success. And then there's just a concerted effort by certain people to just fuck with it and ruin it. It's a bummer. Anyway. Yeah. I don't know if you guys have anything else to chime in there on my little rant. But
no, I mean we could end up doing a whole episode based on this topic, and I would absolutely enjoy the fuck out of it. But I don't think that's what people have come for. So I'll just sign off on what you've said, and we'll move on.
and yeah, as always, thank you for writing in, Otaku, and especially thank you for mentioning it so that we could mention. We did this episode. If there is anybody out there who I know, at least I talked with Elio a bit afterward, and he got sucked into the show as well after we talked about it. So good for people to know that there is stuff out there. I've seen a couple of screen grabs where I was like, oh shit, okay, so this isn't just like a scene or an animatic leaked. It's like, legit full stuff. So I have avoided it. I actually still haven't watched the second to last episode yet either. So I'm kind of just saving them together. Okay. So let's get into what we got into this past week as it pertains to the horror genre. Andi, why don't you kick us off? What did you get into?
Sure. Last week I talked about me having rewatched David Fincher's adaptation of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Yes.
And having watched it for the second time, liking it more than the first time, I thought, well, I'm interested in how this story goes on. Back when they had released the Swedish adaptations in cinemas before the Fincher version, I had seen the first two. I had never seen the third one, and to be honest, I wasn't.
So far, you're describing my exact experience. I still have yet to see the third one.
And you have read books, which I have not.
Just the first two, yeah. The third one is unknown to me in every medium.
Anyway, so I didn't really like them that much back then. I thought the Salander character is cool, and Noomi Rapace was cool, and she was new to everyone outside of Sweden, I believe. And so these movies introduced her to the rest of the world, and I think everyone fell in love with her. And when the Fincher version came out, it was a big debate which version is the better one, or that Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I went to the library, and they had the three Swedish movies on DVD. I watched them this past week over the course of 3 days. So each night or each evening when I came home from work, I watched one of the movies. And they get increasingly less interesting. So my my experience from back then stands today, but now I have seen the third one as well.
Okay.
So yeah, the thing is, especially compared to the David Fincher movie, these are Swedish TV movies that then they decided to release in theaters, but for the TV broadcast, these were per book, two 90-minute movies, 180 minutes per book. And for the theatrical cut, the first and the third movie are edited down by more than 30 minutes, and the second one more by 50 minutes.
Damn.
Which I'm assuming doesn't really help the flow of the storytelling, because these movies are pretty bumpy and choppy. And then I must say, Noomi Rapace is still cool. The Lisbon Salander character is still cool. Mikael Nyqvist, however you pronounce his name, is a pretty bland actor in a pretty bland role as Mikael Blomkvist. There's not too much to these characters. And then the first movie, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, has the most interesting story and has a proper mystery and a case to be solved and a cool idea. The other two movies, they might be more interesting, especially in Sweden. I watched an old documentary on Stieg Larsson and his work as a journalist exposing right-wing organizations in Sweden and older political cases that he referenced and that were influential to him becoming a journalist, and all these things that he puts into these books and that might be more well known in Sweden. I know these books were huge successes all over the world. In Germany, everyone read these books. I didn't. But then there's also the criticism that they're not very well written. Because he was a journalist and not a novelist. Anyway, so yeah, I feel like the Swedish movies, the Fincher movie is a Fincher movie. So even if you don't like the story, you still get a Fincher movie, and it is written to be a theatrical movie. And maybe the TV versions flow a little bit better. I don't know. The theatrical versions of the Swedish movies, said the first one is okay, and then they become less and less interesting to me, at least. So. But no, I've seen them. But that the whole thing of now having watched 4 crime movies set in Sweden, although 2 of those were basically the same movie or the same story at least. Which again, to circle back to that, of course, it was interesting seeing the Fincher version and the Swedish version so close together. Within just a few days, I watched The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, US and Sweden, and to be able to compare the differences. Whenever I had finished one of the Swedish movies, I went to Wikipedia and read the English and the German entry on the book, so that I at least had some estimation of what might be in the book that didn't make it into the movie, or which changes were made for the US versions and which for the Swedish version. For example, the conclusion for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo in the American version is a little different from the Swedish version. The Swedish version is closer to the book and things like that. Anyway, so yeah, I was in the mindset of Nordic noir, which is a genre that I haven't read. I've seen things, but I'm not a big crime reader. But it made me think I have a little bit of time on my hands as long as my wife is in Japan. When I'm at the library checking out the Swedish movies, I will have a look at the crime novel section and just without any preparation, I just walked along the shelves and looked at books. And whenever I thought this looked interesting, I grabbed a book, read the summary in the back, and things like that. Anyway, I went home with a crime novel from Iceland.
Nice.
It's called The Darkness. That's the English title of the book, Darkness. The Darkness. In Icelandic, it's called Dimma, which is, as far as I understand, the literal translation of darkness. It's written by Ragnar Jónasson, and it's the first novel in a trilogy about Hulda Hermannsdóttir, a female police officer. In the first book, she's close to retirement. That book is about the last few days before her retirement, when she's trying to solve a cold case before she's sent away from the precinct. And then the other books go back in time, so her story is told backwards from the first book on. And I really enjoyed that first book. I read it in such a short time, which is very unusual for me. I've said it often in the past, I'm a very unfocused reader, but that book I read within 3 days or so. And so yesterday I went back to the library and got me the next 2 books, and I started reading the second book today, and I'm like 100 pages in, which is nice. Again, very unusual for me. So I'm enjoying these books a lot. Ragnar Jónasson seems to be a very successful Icelandic writer. I mean, he has translations in English and in German, which tells you something that about his success. It has been on bestseller lists, and the books have been on bestseller lists in Germany. And he writes other crime books, not only this Hulda series, although as far as I understand, there's originally this Hulda trilogy. Then there's another book which is a prequel to this trilogy, although these books are prequels within themselves. Because the story is told backwards.
She's going to end up in kindergarten, right?
and then there's also sequels about the guy that takes Hulda's place in the precinct, because she goes into retirement. So there's another one coming in, and it's already talked about that there's a new guy coming in, and so the sequel series is about that guy. Anyway, so the Hulda series from Ragnar Jónasson, I would like to recommend. Very entertaining books. And then we don't dabble in the world of true crime too much, but last week I was interested in having a more to listen to a more journalistic podcast again, something in the vein of Serial or S-Town, these 6, 7, 8 episodes, one case told by some journalist. And so I did some research. I ended up listening to I think it's the latest season in a podcast series called In the Dark, which is done by the New Yorker, the magazine. And this latest season is called Blood Relatives. And I specifically bring this up because we have someone from Essex on this podcast, and this is about a murder case that took place in Essex. So I was wondering how familiar our Dave Roberts might be with that case of the White House farm murders, where a family, a mother, her 2 sons, and her parents, the 5 people, were killed, presumably by the brother, who is in jail currently. And this podcast makes a well-researched case that he might be innocent. So the journalist, whose name I'm blanking on, that did the podcast, had released a long article in the New Yorker beforehand, after her research, and then they made this podcast series. And it's a very well-made podcast series, a very interesting case, a tragic case in many ways. I mean, 5 people died. That's tragic in itself. And then someone might be in jail for now, I think it's like 40 years. Damn. And he might be innocent. And so, yeah. Dave, does this ring any bell at your end?
I can't say that it does, to be honest with you. I don't know if that's because we've had a lot of horrific crimes that have taken place in Essex over the years, or if this one just, for whatever reason, didn't really tickle public consciousness in the same way in the UK that it maybe did other places.
You would have also movies made about this case, or at least one, or a series or something like that. So it has been adapted into fictional programming or semi-fictional, semi-documentary. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems to be a pretty big case.
I would say maybe.
Thought, and you're from a police household, so I thought maybe that is something, because your mother. I'm pretty sure if you ask your mother, she would probably know if.
That was going to be my guess, because it happened
older
in
than you at the time.
Probably would, because I was only about 2 years old at that point, so I wasn't. Yeah. My interest in true crime hadn't really burgeoned at that point. So, honestly, it hasn't burgeoned now. But maybe it's one of those ones that you had to be around when it happened for it to really kind of take the imagination. The most famous historical crime that has taken place in Essex is probably the one that was represented in the movie called The Essex Boys, which was a film where basically there were two guys who were had up for murder, and one of them shot the victim. The other one was quoted as saying, "Let him have it," and the argument has always been,
I know this.
Yeah, the argument has always been that he was saying, "Let him have the gun and don't shoot him."
Yeah.
The poor choice of words, I think, probably is what it comes down to. But that's like one of those ones that kind of echoes through the years in Essex. The White House Farm, though, it's the first time I've heard of it, but I'll ask afterwards, because I'm sure probably both my granddad, if he was still here, he'd probably immediately know what I was talking about.
Absolutely.
Mum probably.
I immediately thought of him because I know he had been on the police force for more or less all his life, and it seems like I thought, because this article and this podcast series stirred up things. If you look for it, you find very recent articles from The Guardian, and I thought maybe it had been in the British media, because this podcast series came out, I believe, last year, not even a year ago. So it seems like it had been in the British media in very, very recent times as well. So I thought maybe you might have heard or read something about it.
I'm reading into it now. It looks as though the latest appeal was in 2002. So maybe at the time, being as that was, I mean, it's shocking that that's 24 years ago at this point. I feel so fucking old. Maybe I heard about it at the time, but my brain very much works on the basis of I've got a limited amount of space in here, and the more useful that information is, the less likely I am to retain it. So
I just downloaded the first episode, and I bought that Iceland crime book. I don't know if I just am at the right place at the right time, but all the stuff you've been saying, Andi, I'm like, oh man, I could get back into all this shit so easily. Like this, I love all this stuff. I haven't gotten into it in a long time, but all the things you've mentioned, I'm like, oh, I love Deathtown, love this. Like,
and yet you haven't ordered a single Dizzy Rascal LP. What the fuck is
apparently
going
not,
on?
I know. No, this is before the episode, for anyone that doesn't understand why you're talking shit about me all of a sudden. But yeah, absolutely. Cool. I think also I was going to say Heidi Blake. I think that's the reporter.
Yeah.
I was going to mention. Yeah. Okay. So I'm excited. I'm going to listen to this.
That's it from me.
Alrighty. Dave, what you got this week?
Yeah, so I didn't think I had anything, and then I was like, oh, wait, no, I've got two things, and then I might also have a third thing, but I'm not sure about the qualifications. So I'll stick with the two. The first one, the one that is probably less likely, but still, Fist of the North Star has got a new TV series that's currently airing, and I believe it started airing in April. It's a post-apocalyptic future where nuclear war has ravaged the Earth, or something has ravaged the Earth. I'm not 100% sure on that one, honestly. No, it was nuclear war, because they cover it in one of the episodes. And it's kind of... It's interesting, actually, because... I'll get into it. But yeah, it's a brand new version of the Fist of the North Star story. It's made by TMS Entertainment, and it's CG animated, so it's not everybody's cup of tea. For me, I'm kind of in the middle with it. I don't mind it because they make a lot of effort to cel shade a lot of stuff, and so a lot of the animation actually just looks like traditional stuff. But then every now and then there is some CG stuff that gets thrown in there, and I'm reminded immediately of Blam and Knights of Sidonia and a lot of the other CG animated stuff that came around probably about a decade ago at this point. Disappointing thing about it is that the technology hasn't really moved on. It still looks now the same as it did back then. But it looked all right back then, and it's passable now, and it's really the story that I'm watching it for. I am no expert on Fist of the North Star. I'll put that front and center. I've never read the books. I've never seen any of the old anime series or the OVAs, the movies, any of that. So I have no idea whether this version of the story is true to what was written in the manga all those years ago. I don't know if it's a new version of previous stories that were come up with by the mangaka or the original anime producers. Haven't got a clue about any of that. But what I do know is that there are so many visual references in this thing to other post-apocalyptic media, and I love it, but I don't know if that's them adding it in now or if it was stuff that was in the manga back in the day. Like, there are several characters in the first few episodes that are basically just massive rip-offs of Mad Max characters. There's one dude who's got like this massive mohawk, and he's got like this outfit with like feathers around the neck, and I'm just like, oh, so you're the bad guy from Mad Max 2 then? Okay, cool. I like it. It's very bloody, it's very violent. It exposes kind of like the worst parts of human nature as well as some of the best parts of human nature. But the main reason I wanted to talk about it is because of the dub. The dub is not good. In fact, the dub might be the worst dub that I've seen that was created by human hands in the history of animation. It's made by Transperfect Media Cape Town. I don't want to throw shade at all of these voice actors because some of the voice acting is genuinely actually not bad at all. Gavin Gomez, I think his name is. I'm looking at a screenshot here now. Here we go. Yeah, so Gavin Gomez plays Zeed. He's actually really good. Leah Sayers as Rin is very good. The person that plays Kenshiro, I can't watch the English dub because of Kenshiro. I don't know what he was going for, but it feels like they would have been better off getting literally anyone else to play him. Like, you know when you have like a character who he is the big bad alpha male, like, you're not going to take me down in a million years, I'm the lone wanderer, I've got a gruff voice. And then literally I turned the show on, and within 30 seconds I was like, oh no. And I rewound it, and then I set up the audio so that it was Japanese with subtitles, and I enjoyed the show much better. And then later on, I put it on in the background, and it was on English, and I couldn't be bothered because actually he doesn't speak that often that it ruins it for me. But my God, it's like the director heard him doing the voice, and he was like, could you be slightly thinner and readier? Yeah, no, readier, no. And then they got a Keanu Reeves delivery up from any one of his less well-liked movies, and they were like, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for disinterested Keanu Reeves. And that's what we got. There's no emotion in the voice. There's no inflection. Half the time, I'm going to put this down to the voice director, because you wouldn't put this out unless you were happy with it. Just the choices of takes that they use specifically for Kenshiro are awful. And then later on, King as well is pretty bad, but not as bad. The rest of the cast are fantastic, but they're let down by the fact that the main character, the one that you want to hear talk the most, just sounds fucking terrible. So do watch the show because it's worthwhile. Please watch the Japanese audio English sub, because honestly, I mean, if you want to laugh, watch the English dub, please, by all means. But I did warn you. So yeah, Fist of the North Star. I think it's worth watching. It's releasing on a week-by-week basis at the moment. It's essentially kind of, I wouldn't call it a simulcast, but I think probably we're getting episodes like a week after the fact. So that might have something to do with the quality of the dub as well, if they're having to dub it and they've only got like a 1 week lead time. I don't want to be too negative about them, but put it this way, like, a little while ago, there was some drama because a couple of properties that came up on Amazon were dubbed using AI, and it sounded absolutely horrendous, like even worse than this did. And it got memed to hell, and Amazon quite rightly took it down immediately. And we've not seen that since. When I first started watching this show, I genuinely had to second guess whether it was AI dubbing or not. That's how bad it was. And then later on, obviously, when I was watching it in the background, I heard some of the other voice actors for the English dub doing their job, and they were fantastic. Like the background actors especially did a fantastic job. Sometimes that stuff can really be left by the wayside and kind of half-assed because nobody thinks you're going to pay attention to it. But they really did a great job with the background actors and things like that. And as I said, like the supporting cast around Kenshiro are very good as well. It's just Kenshiro and to a lesser extent King. I think it's just I don't know, man. I don't know. I shouldn't speak out of turn about a voice actor until I know for sure exactly what's going on. I feel like this is a performance of somebody who is either very new to the business or has been hamstrung terribly by a voice director who doesn't really know what they're looking for or what the voice of the character should be. Because this ain't it, Chief. This really is not it. So on to happier things. I was looking for something to put on in the background while I was playing Football Manager after we convened on last weekend. And something turned up on YouTube, and I was like, I wonder if this is the same thing that David watched. And I think Andy may have mentioned that he'd seen it as well. I'm not sure. Mike Mignola Drawing Monsters, 2022 documentary.
Yep. You're exactly right. I mentioned it. I did the Kickstarter, and then Andi brought it up a handful of months back, I think. It's
fantastic. This is great. Like it really kind of filled in a few blanks for me as far as Mignola himself is concerned. I loved how they kind of went into his relationship with his father and his brothers, and the creative influence that not necessarily that he's had on them, but the way he's allowed them to use their creativity and kind of opened up avenues for some of them. Like his daughter, for example. I mean, she won like a fucking Eisner or something at like 9 years old for a story that she co-wrote with him, which is basically her story, and he just put his name on it because he was there in the room asking her questions to flesh it out, I guess. But,
he drew it.
Oh, he drew it as well. Yes,
it's not like he didn't. Not like he did no work on.
No, do you know what, Andy? You're absolutely right, and I apologise. The problem was I was kind of 3/4 listening to it and 1/4 watching what was going on another screen.
No, but to your point, like one of my favorite moments in that documentary is, and this is just a very subjective, like personal thing. I'm a huge Steven Universe fan too, which is a fandom that's like really you would think has no overlap with Hellboy. At least I never thought it did. And then there's that moment where Rebecca Sugar's talking about like a direct, like very huge piece of Steven Universe's design came directly from Mignola, and it was something
like she wanted to have like a big bad or something that was related to religious iconography, and she was talking to him about it and said like, you know, what do you think? And I think he either suggested the particular god or goddess in question or something like that, but then he said the iconography for this particular one is lions and stars. And so, and then they showed a screen grab of a publicity still of Stephen wearing the T-shirt with the star on it, which she said at that point he had no design on his T-shirt. And a lion standing next to him.
Lion named Lion, big pink lion.
So fucking good.
Great show.
Man, yeah. So I watched that entire documentary kind of it was funny to begin with. I was concentrating more on what was happening in my game, and then by the end of it, I was just kind of, the game's getting in the way. I want to watch this thing. It was really good, like the history of him working on like Batman and things like that, and the way that he became part of was it Dark Horse? I forget the details now. Yeah, and like that whole kind of like that time where creators were able to kind of stretch their legs and do what they wanted to do, and it was less restrictive than the days of like Superman where Schuster and was it Silverman and See, this is fuck DC for doing this, that I can't remember the names of the guys that were responsible for Superman being created, and fuck me as well for not being bothered to do it.
It's Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Ah, yes, thank you. Like they were basically hung out to dry by DC where it came to Superman rights for years and years and years, and only got the credit really after it wasn't worth anything to them. Whereas you have this whole kind of like generation of creators who were able to be slightly more hands-on and controlling of what they created, and quite rightly too. And yeah, just the way that people talked about like the artwork, like somebody brought a page or a comic book of Mignola's in to like a university lecture, and the lecturer just started talking about how it was influenced by things like German expressionism, and I was immediately like, I know what that means. But it's right. Like you look at some of those pages and the way that the architecture and like the background art just plays with light and dark, and certain things are exaggerated in different ways, and just his use of shadow just in general is just absolutely masterful. Like I don't think anyone uses negative space in that way quite the same as Mignola, to the point that he finds it very difficult to give over artistic control for some of his other books, because he's like, no one can draw like me. And it doesn't sound big-headed when he says that, because you know what he means. Like he's got a very specific style which no one else seems to people try to ape it. And again, this is something that was mentioned directly by another artist in the documentary. You can try and copy it, but you're not going to get close enough to be able to pull it off. So you might as well do something completely different, like they did with Little Hellboy, which I fucking love, by the way. Like, thank you for letting me know about that Kickstarter, because I downloaded, basically, I paid, there was a, not Kickstarter.
Oh, it was the Humble Bundle. Yeah, it was everything.
I got like all of BPRD, all of Hellboy, and there was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles bundle at the same time, which I downloaded. And I hate the fact that I have to look at these things through 3 different applications and 2 different pieces of equipment because of how things work and what you can view on what. But man, Little Hellboy is an absolute joy. Just absolutely mad. You know immediately it's part of the Hellboy universe, but at the same time it just has its own completely different look, which just, it's so charming. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It only came out in 2022. It is available to watch legitimately on Amazon. But I was on YouTube and I just saw that it was available on there, so I just clicked it. You know, like, I'm a simple man. I see something I want, I click. But yeah, it is on Amazon Prime Video for those who want to give it the viewing figures that it deserves. And I'll probably rewatch it at some point on Amazon as well, just to give it the extra click, apart from anything else.
I haven't looked into it since they launched it. But if anyone out there who has seen this, or if you haven't seen it, the same team has gone on to. So I'm assuming that it was successful, but they did a Kickstarter for a new documentary that's all about the Gilmore Girls, which is as different as possible, but also a thing where I was like, I would watch that. I liked the Gilmore Girls, and this documentary I thought was pretty well done. So I was getting all the emails because I did the Kickstarter for the Hellboy thing, so they were trying to get people for that over to the new thing. Yeah. So that's how I didn't pledge to the Gilmore Girls one, but I'm assuming it did okay.
I mean, I think that's the beauty of being a documentarian, is that you're not necessarily bound by genres or anything really, other than the fact that you want to document something. And as long as there's a compelling story behind it that you want to dig into, then you can do a documentary about anything. You could go from, Hellboy to Gilmore Girls to Ayrton Senna to My Little Pony. Like, you know, you could really just do whatever you want. Like the key to being a good documentarian is just capturing those moments and getting those interviews and asking the right questions. Also,
because Sugar shows up in that doc probably as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. She does. The other thing that I found really interesting and a little bit heartbreaking as well is just seeing the relationship between Del Toro and Mignola from the beginning, and then seeing it follow through and how it kind of broke down at the end. And I'm just kind of sitting there thinking, I hope that eventually one of them reaches out to the other and they get to make up, because that stuff's all in the past at this point.
I think they're talking. I think they're
fine.
I think yeah.
So,
you never got that confirmation from this. Like you got the feeling that they admired each other's work still, but that they weren't necessarily on great terms.
I think this is one of the topics that Austin and I have talked about without mics. Maybe not the most, but it's up there. We talk about this constantly, it feels like, because it is such a interesting, unique dynamic and situation with two people who are, I think, extraordinarily talented creators, like visionary, like not even just like creative, but in another tier, another level. And Austin feels the same way about Del Toro and Mignola. So just that dynamic is interesting enough. But then you have like them working in different mediums, some of which, depending on what the property is something they created and are highly protective of, and feel like they have this very strong vision. And they were like, honestly, it's pretty crazy and impressive. They were able to make 2 movies together in the way that they were. Like, Mignola's credited at least on the second one fully. Like, he has a script, or it's either a story or a script credit. Obviously, producer. He was on set in the first film, maybe the second one too. But then as you see the different interviews and things come out post Golden Army and them not making a third movie, and things that they have said, and like Mignola putting his foot down about like, we're absolutely, you're not doing it in a comic format, like that's my medium or whatever, which part of me as a fan is like, oh, that sucks. Like I would like, why can't we at least have the comic to end this out? But then as the like artistic side of me, I'm like, no, I get it. Like, this is your thing that you're so protective of.
That's his line in the sand. Yeah.
Right. And it's not even that it's been like demonstrably proven over decades that you are doing well with protecting it the way that you are, and being very and his wife, I think, deserves a lot of the credit as well. He mentions that, and that's covered in the documentary some too. Like, so as like Andi said, I think that's always been my take as well, is that like they have been, and for a while now, I think have been in a place where they like are fine. They absolutely like respect each other. There's not bad blood or clashing or anything else.
They're just not going to work together anytime soon.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't, or at least on Hellboy. Like, I think they both now for years have accepted like that's not happening. I remember Doug Jones came to Ball State when I was going there, so I would have been like 21, maybe 20, maybe younger than that, 19 or 20, and asking him, like waiting in line and asking him like, what about Hellboy 3? So I know they've all been being asked about this question for years and years and years. And Ron Perlman's talked about it a bunch. I mean, he's older now, like he's probably too old to be playing Hellboy, and obviously they've gone on and made other Hellboy movies, like reboots and stuff too. So anyway, it is such a fascinating thing, because at every turn there's part of you that wants to be like, Mike, trust Guillermo on this thing, or vice versa. Guillermo, trust Mike on this thing. But at the same time, you're like, I get why they can't fully, because they both have such
and it's not
interesting...
just the two of them when it comes to movies. It's not just that Mignola and Del Toro have to decide, we're going to make Hellboy 3.
Yeah,
there's other people, there's studios, there's... Because
where's the money come from? Yeah.
That last Hellboy movie cost a nickel. A third Del Toro Hellboy movie would cost a lot more. So I think it's not just them not getting along working on a Hellboy movie together.
No, sure.
Because, I mean, as I said, I think my impression in recent years was that, just as David described, they respect each other. They sometimes even talk, and I don't feel like there's really bad blood between them.
No.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
That's good. Yeah, so there we go. That's everything for this week. I can't even remember what that third possible was now, so we'll just leave it at 2 and move on. David.
Okay. I have a couple things I wanted to mention very quickly. I this isn't. Yeah, it's not horror. I'm not going to mention it. It's not horror enough. I did go see a movie. I went and saw Obsession. This is the film from Curry Barker, right? Man, I'm blanking on his name. That's such a specifically wrong thing to be. It's Curry Barker. Okay. I was like, if I had this wrong, that's a weird thing to call somebody. The debut sort of horror film it was released through Neon and Blumhouse. I think it was Neon anyway. And the premise of it is essentially that there's this guy who has this thing for this girl, crush on her, seems pretty maybe unrequited. You can't really tell, like, at the beginning of the movie, is she leading him on? Is she interested? Is she not interested? He is not quite an incel at the beginning, but like maybe sort of in that camp, at least in terms of like how he is viewing himself and his ways of interacting with girls. He's getting bad advice from his other guy friend about it. So he's just at this kind of crossroads of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm awkward. I can't figure this out. And he had stopped into this it's kind of like a head shop. Like you buy incense and stuff there. And they had this display for these things called One Wish Willows. And it's this like sort of antiquated Cracker Jack kind of looking old school box and design. And it says, you know, like you open it up, you make a wish, you crack the branch. It's like a little branch inside, and then your wish comes true. And it's very like kind of gimmicky, you know, like those old school like comic book mail-in order forms where you can get sea monkeys or fucking with the little like shake someone's hand and shock them like prank thing, stuff like that. And he has this moment with this girl and he's dropping her off, kind of tries to talk to her about it. It goes very poorly. And so in this moment of kind of like, you know, self-pity, feeling bad for himself, whatever, thinking that it's not going to do anything, he takes the One Wish Willow out, says, I wish that, I forget her name now, but that she would fall in love with me, or she would be, love me more than anything else in the world, and snaps it. And then the camera pans over and she has walked back out to the car and is standing outside of his door. So it's immediately got some sort of supernatural thing going on. And then from there, it just ramps up and evolves and spirals more and more and more as you realize like the level of her devotion, obsession to him. It's really good. I liked it quite a bit. This is one that was very hyped up and has been talked about between festivals and just word of mouth for a long time. So my expectations were pretty high, and I feel like it pretty much met them. Like I thought it was really, you know, it lived up to the hype in a lot of ways. There is like a lot of, I was happy. I'm curious to see and so far I haven't seen too much craziness around it, but I did wonder coming out of the movie, like, man, especially now, what is the conversation and discourse going to be around this movie? Because there's, you know, very clearly from the outset, consent that is not being honored with this dynamic. So it's immediately you're just like, how is he going to handle this? What is he going to do? How is he going to try to fix this? And you see pretty quickly he's not, and he's kind of a shithead. So I won't spoil the movie, but I was glad that it did address some of these things pretty head on in a way that was dark and uncomfortable for sure at times, but still in a way where I felt like it was clear enough that it was not. I don't know. It's crazy waters to be in for a horror movie these days, I think, in a lot of ways, with implications and everything else. And I felt like they navigated it pretty well. It's very violent, very intense. The performances are amazing. The main lead, the girl that got the curse wish thing on her, is amazing. It's one of those performances that you see where you're like, oh, she's about to pop. Like, she's about to be in tons of shit. And maybe almost like when you see Samara Weaving for the first time, or, you know, one of those where you're just like, oh, there's a commitment here to the genre that is so cool. And like right away you're like, oh, you get it. Like you get the kind of movie that you're making and the frequency that you need to tune into to make this really effective, and which she absolutely does. Like, she carries so much of the movie just in that performance. But then you can also tell, like, you'll you know, if you want to go beyond, like, not to say beyond horror, like, but you know how the industry views all this stuff too. Like, you could see her showing up in bigger non-horror movies pretty quickly based off of this performance alone. But really good, really liked it. I won't really talk too much more about it because I don't want to spoil anything for people. It just came out here in the States last weekend. So watched that, really enjoyed it. And then the other thing I wanted to quickly mention, I finally got around to playing a video game called Reanimal. Have either of you guys heard of this game or seen anything for it?
No, that's a new one on me.
Okay. So this is developed. It's a horror game, horror adventure sort of game developed by. It's either Tarsier Studios or Tarsier. I don't know if it's Tarsier. Probably not. I think they're like Swedish or something. It's from the same team that made the games, the first 2 games in the Little Nightmares series, which you guys maybe are more familiar with.
Yeah.
I played, I think, the second Little Nightmares game with Daniel a bit and was into it. It's very like, what's the word I'm looking for? Not cute, but it has a more sort of like bespoke, almost Tim Burton-y, but still darker, that kind of aesthetic. And Reanimal is the same. I would say Reanimal doubles down and is even better in that category. I liked what I played of Little Nightmares. There was something about it that was a little bit too... that it wasn't horror enough for me in some ways. Like it was straddling that line between being kind of like Coraline or... one of those sort of things which I'm a big fan of, but where it's that spooky, but also kind of, cute and adorable kind of thing. Reanimal feels very much more centered firmly in horror. It has a similar vibe, similar style, in terms of like, the way that the camera is set up and the way that you're interacting with these characters. You control, if you're playing by yourself, you control one character, and then there's a second character with you that's controlled by the computer. But if not, you can play it multiplayer. I think it's more designed that way. So there's different little puzzles and things that you're doing, or you both have to, rotate this fucking valve in order to get this door to open, shit like that. But the atmosphere, like, it is fucking drenched in spooky, like, horror atmosphere. In a lot of ways, that aspect of it reminded me of Inside, another game I've mentioned on the show before. I'm a huge fan of. I thought it was genuinely kind of just a masterpiece, to where it is this sort of very unknown, creepy world that you don't really have any kind of understanding or answers for at the beginning. And I've played maybe 2 hours of it so far, and I still don't understand what's going on, but not in a way that feels opaque or bad. It's just all you really know is that you play this little kid who has a mask on, and there's a little girl with him that also has a mask on, and they're trying to save another one of their friends, also a kid, on this island who also has a mask on. So that's about all the story that you have. But there are these all these grotesque monsters, like the creature design and stuff is great in it. There's like definitely a sense of survival horror kind of dread, where you can tell in these situations, like, there's no way for you to fight. There's no way for you to even really run away successfully. So you're having to sneak and be creative. And but so far, really into it. And we'll report back as I make my way through the rest of the game. But if you like the Little Nightmares series, I believe the third one came out this year or late last year, and people hated it. But I think it was also a different team. It wasn't the same people who made the first 2. But at least those first 2, if you like that and want something that's definitely more firmly sort of grounded in the horror genre, then I think Reanimal is definitely worth a look. And that is it for me this week. So we can dive right into our main topic, which is Habit, the 1997 vampire horror film, written, directed, starring, I want to say edited, I think some sound and film editing both, by Larry Fessenden, who is an American filmmaker, actor, producer, who we have talked about on the show many times over the years. Maybe most directly in some of our horror and audio episodes. We've covered a lot of Tales from Beyond the Pale episodes that he has either directly written or produced or was involved with in some way through his production company, Glass Eye Pix. I'm trying to think if have we done any of, is this his first actual movie we've done of his?
I think so. I think I haven't even seen any other movies that he made. I've seen him in other movies.
There's one in my head that I'm just looking up to see.
His main ones.
It's not that one. Oh, I'm thinking.
His main ones are.
Sorry, go on.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was thinking Jugface because he was in it, but that's not his film. That's Chad Crawford-Kinkle. So, yeah, this may be.
And I was getting ready to say there's a ton of stuff that we've talked about where he is involved in some capacity behind or in front of the camera. He's a dead corpse in You're Next. He's a producer, or sort of like was a producer mentor to Ty West. To who was the other one that he worked a lot with? I'm blanking on his name now. But yeah, he's constantly in. Wingard, yeah. He's constantly in playing bit roles in horror films, sometimes lead roles in horror films. He's in a few Scorsese movies. He's in Killers of the Flower Moon. I think it's a smaller role, but is this kind
Till
of...
Dawn was a big thing.
That's what I was going to say earlier. Completely blanked on. So we talked about Until Dawn as well. Obviously, he didn't do anything with the movie, as far as I know. But with the games, he and Graham Resnick worked on the script. And from what I remember, the script is like fucking 800 pages long, something crazy, because they had to write all this dialogue. So very, very involved with a lot of those things. And then I've mentioned a few of his movies on the podcast over the years. I've seen. This is the third of his movies that I've seen that he's directed, but I talked about Wendigo at some point years ago, and I talked about Depraved, which was his sort of like Frankenstein movie that came out in 2019. So he is this fixture in the horror world. I think very specifically a fixture in the New York scene. You see him get kind of compared to or associated with like Abel Ferrara and, you know, some of like the old school kind of 70s New York. I'm sure there's a very specific even borough that, you know, you could cite that I'm not aware of or whatever. I met him at New York Comic Con, I don't know, 5, 6, probably longer than that. It was before COVID. And Glass Eye Pix had a booth there, which I was absolutely not prepared or expecting for at all, because it's a comic book convention and I didn't expect them to be there, let alone any kind of production company. And he was like walking to the convention center from wherever he was at there in the city. Like, it's still very much a local guy. So anyway, little quick intro to give a little bit of context about him, and I'm sure we'll get into it more as we talk about it. But for years, I had always heard about his, and I know at least Andi as well. And Dave, we're going to start with you, so you can tell us when we kick it off what your experience is with this one. But Habit was a movie that was kind of always in the conversation with a lot of horror fans. I want to say the first time I heard about it was through Elric Kane on the Shockwaves podcast. It might have been Killer POV days, honestly, where he talked about this New York indie horror sort of film, drama film, where the vampirism is kind of dealt with and portrayed and framed as more of an addiction, specifically like with drugs or alcohol, and adding some parallels there. I also knew that it was very sexual, that it was this, you know, sort of romance kind of abusive relationship sort of thing, and always was aware that it was not your typical vampire movie, which then kind of became a thing with Fessenden as I learned more about him, that it was like, okay, this is his Frankenstein movie, but it's not your typical Frankenstein movie. He had a movie come out in 2023 called Blackout, which I own but haven't watched yet, and it's his take on the Wolfman movie. So he does this quite often, where it's his own sort of style and approach with a story or tropes that you may already be familiar with, but done in his way. So let's start our conversation, as we always do, with what we thought overall, general thoughts. Dave, kick us off. What did you think of Habit this week?
Overall, I enjoyed it. There were things about it that I didn't necessarily love as much as others, but I think overall it was a positive experience watching it. I'm not a massive fan of the shaky handheld camera style of the movie. I think that's probably as much to do with budget as it is with anything else, so it's not something that I'm going to hang it by. But I thought it was pretty well written. The acting could be spotty at times. Aaron Beale as Nick, sometimes he was great, other times it really felt like they were doing some kind of improv session. Here I am sitting like I'm an expert on acting, like I could do any better. It sometimes felt a little bit robotic or wooden from him, and other times it felt a lot more natural. But like overall, I thought everyone in the film did a really good job. I very much enjoyed the music. I'm guessing that it was a lot of local bands that were making their way at the time, and it was probably a symbiotic relationship, like we get music for the film and you get exposure for your music. But again, not entirely sure. There was a few things about the movie I really enjoyed. I think the one thing that I came in today wanting to mention, so I'll just throw it out there straight away. the end of the movie specifically I thought was really well done. And it's the moment where they discover the bodies in the alleyway, and then somebody goes to call for an ambulance, and the camera angle changes so that you're looking at Nick and Ray consoling each other in shock because their best friend has died, and you can see Sam in the background laying with all his arms and legs at weird angles. But
makes it sound like he has 10 arms and legs.
Yeah. But you don't see Anna beyond him, where you did in the previous shot. So they don't draw attention to it. They don't make it this big kind of like Friday the 13th. Oh my God, he's gone. He has risen moment. It's just kind of, if you're paying attention, she's not there. She's still alive. She's still doing her vampire thing. And I thought that was a really well done shot. So for all of the criticism, for all of 20 seconds of talking about it, about the camera work, and it's not really the camera work, it's just the fact that I'm not a fan of the kind of handheld style for this particular movie. I really, really did enjoy that scene and that particular shot. And there's a few shots throughout the film that I really enjoyed, like the one at Thanksgiving where he's topping and tailing runner beans, and again, it's Nick and Ray. They're in the background and they're having an argument about Sam and his relationship with Anna. And just like the way that like it keeps cropping in, and the audio almost gets sharper and sharper and more to the front. And like I suppose like the idea of it is that like, oh, is he turning into a vampire? Because at this point we've all kind of clipped onto the fact that, well, she keeps drinking his blood. Is she just a weirdo, or is she a vampire? Or is she a weird vampire? Who knows? Because she's kinky as fuck. But yeah, like it was a very, very sexually charged, kinky movie. Didn't pull its punches there. I love the fact that it used an existing photo essay of nude people in New York. I only noticed this in the credits. It credits the photo study, and it gives the years that it was active, and apparently it was between like 86 and 91 or something like that. So it was it was something that had already happened, it had already existed, and they were just like, let's incorporate this into the movie. So that scene where they're walking past and there's a bunch of naked women on the steps of, I don't know, a library or maybe the Justice Department. I don't know what it was. It was a big building with lots of steps. That was kind of based on something that actually exists in the real world. It feels like a very real movie. It feels more like a kind of guerrilla movie, like they made it without permits, perhaps. And again, that could be a good reason why they were having to use shaky cameras, because it's easier to make your getaway when you're doing that. There were moments where I thought to myself, okay, they've not got the money to set this up, like when they were on the freeway heading towards the house where they had Thanksgiving, and like they're shouting at the motorist next to them to get out of the way, and I'll come over there and I'll punch you. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way that's a crew member that they just arranged to do that with. That's a real person. Like somebody on the motorway like actually had physical harm foisted on them if they didn't get out of the way. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, hang on, when they were talking about being in the breakdown lane, were they actually doing that as well? Because that fucking annoys me when that happens, when I see someone driving along the hard shoulder. Although if they're making a film, it doesn't make it any less illegal, but it makes it slightly more understandable. So yeah, there was like moments like that during the film where I was just like, oh, okay, like this feels very kind of raw and real, and you could tell they made the most of their budget with this one. Like the car accident scene where they end up rescuing that little boy who's on the opposite side of the road. Like it's literally just a fire hydrant that somebody has like taken the top off of, or partly taken the top off of, and then they've jacked a car up and popped its bonnet in front of the fire hydrant to make it look like an accident's happened. But it's effective. Like you get exactly what they're going for, and you buy it. And it feels like a much more gritty and realistic take on a vampire movie or on a supernatural movie. I didn't know this was even a vampire movie until we got to that point where she started really kind of obviously biting him repetitively. Like the first time I was like, okay, she's a bit kinky, but you could see that like the camera lingered on her throat as she was making swallowing motions, And that made me think, oh, hang on a sec, okay. And then she does it again, and I'm like, right, I see where we're going with this, because we are a horror podcast, and at the moment, this is just a kinky sex movie. So this has to go somewhere horror-related. I think she's a vampire. Now, not the entire audience is not going to have that benefit, because they don't all record horror podcasts, and maybe they should, because they do a better job than I would. But I did enjoy the movie. I thought it was pretty well done. As I said, there were things that I wasn't 100% sure on, but for the most part, I thought it was a really effectively made movie, and I've just now noticed that it was made on a 200 grand budget. You can't make shit for 200 grand, so
I think even less than that.
Really?
Because I think that's a like all in sort of market, like everything that they added together.
God, yeah.
Because
I'm just reading
I think the
here.
budget was like 60 grand.
60 grand, yeah.
What I read, yeah.
Holy crap. On 16
Shot on
millimeter
16
film,
millimeter film.
Which would explain why
it
looks a bit on the a little bit on the grainy side, but
it's grimy, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I loved it. The way they set the movie up at the beginning, like, you know, where he's in the apartment, and I was like, oh, is he moving out? And then someone mentions his father, and then it all makes sense. Just kind of setting the world up, and this guy's situation with like helping his girlfriend move into another apartment and going through that, and yeah, I thought it was a really well made, thought out movie. Just there's one or two little bits that maybe could have been better, but I'll tell you what, when I go out and make a movie for $60,000, then I can I can legitimately criticize other people for doing these things. But yeah, what about you guys? Who wants to go next?
Andi, you go next. What did you think of this one?
Oh, I appreciate it as an artifact of 90s independent cinema, and it looks very much like that. And so the visuals of it all totally made sense to me. I knew it was a independent movie shot in New York, and that's it felt familiar in that sense from having seen movies like that back in the day. And I appreciate it as a time capsule of New York City in the 1990s. They made a good job of photographing the city and getting that across. It just wasn't very compelling to me. It was one of those movies that was able to slow down time, where I thought, okay, I guess I'm now at the 30-minute mark, and it's 22 minutes, and I guess now we're at 40 minutes. No, it's 33, and I was a little, when I saw the runtime of the movie, that made me a little cautious. It was almost 2 hours long for, again, an independent movie from the 1990s. I thought, this might go on a little too long. It is very, very slow. So I was never quite drawn into it. I agree with Dave on the acting sometimes, and especially I found it funny that you pointed out Nick, because I had that same reaction to Nick, where in the beginning I thought, well, that guy's not a good actor, and later on I thought, well, he's pretty good here right now. I actually grew to like that character, and with other actors as well. Some were okay, some were not that great, and it was they were able to change from scene to scene, the same person. Sometimes they were better, sometimes they weren't. But I'm assuming, I don't know, maybe they didn't have that many takes some days. Maybe they shot the movie over a longer course of time and people got better or worse. I don't know. So yeah, it's just it didn't really do that much for me. Maybe it was the pacing. Maybe it was the overall quality of the acting that didn't quite get me to like the movie more. I'm not as sure about the ending as Dave is. To me, it's more ambiguous. I'm not able to pronounce words today.
No, you're doing well, man.
There you go.
Because when the camera shoots upwards from that parking garage, we see the two bodies lying there, and we see their friends on the other side, and then the angle shifts, as Dave described. The camera moves around the two characters while they are still looking at the spot where those two bodies were just a moment before. The camera moves around one of the people, and we see that it's only one body now lying there, and no one is reacting to the fact that the audience saw two, and seconds later there's only one. So maybe one just wasn't there in the beginning at all because she's just a metaphor for addiction, and so I don't know. I'm sure it is open to interpretation, and I'm not one of those people that needs an exact answer. Does the top fall over or not? I don't care that much, to be honest. They made that movie that way for a reason. If they wanted to give you an answer, they had given you an answer. So, and that is a similar ending to me in this case, where I don't think Larry Fessenden wanted to give us a exact answer. I don't know, but to me, it wasn't an exact answer. I didn't have a certain reaction to that ending where I was certain, okay, this is what's happened. She was there, but now she's not. So while we were not looking, she got up and left. I don't know. It's not how I interpreted the ending, at least. Yeah. So I'm happy that now I have seen a Larry Fessenden movie, one that he made, not just one that he was in. But yeah, I was a little surprised, to be honest, when I looked on Letterboxd and saw the reviews by people like Elric Kane and Alex Toliopoulos and people like that. They were so moved by the movie and praised it, and because I did not have the same reaction. David, what do you think?
I was in a similar space as the two of you, but more positive than you, I think. But I also had seen some Fessenden stuff. So my biggest takeaway was this felt very much like watching Kronos after I had already seen. I'm trying to think what his I guess Devil's Backbone or something that's not, it's not Shape of Water, but it's further on in his filmography, and then going back and watching Kronos, which is how I would have interacted with Del Toro's stuff as well, with that movie in particular. So that feeling of watching the first one and being able to tell, like, okay, this is in every way, shape, and form stripped down, less money, less scope, less bigger names, smaller, not as big, draws when it comes to the actors. Like on every level, it's pared down, but I can still tell that it's Del Toro making it. Similar thing here. It's like I can still tell it's Fessenden based off of the stuff of his that I've seen. But to all of your guys' points with some of the criticisms, I felt those too for sure. I didn't know it was until I started it that it was also like it's almost 2 hours long, I think I want to say, or right around 2. And that I don't want to say was alarming, but I also was just like, this doesn't seem like a movie that needs to be that long. And I would argue it's not a movie that needs to be that long. It does feel like a younger, not first-time filmmaker, because I think his debut feature was a movie called No Telling, which came out before this. And the only reason I even am aware of that is because I watched the copy of Habit I have as part of the Larry Fessenden box set that Scream Factory put out some years ago. And it's on there as like the first, it's No Telling, Habit, Wendigo, and The Long Winter, The Last Winter, whatever it's called. So I had a frame of reference between Wendigo and Depraved in terms of like his style and the way he does, how he approaches storytelling, how he approaches cinematography. Because it is a different flavor for sure. It reminds me in some ways, again, this is not an exact or perfect comparison, but in a similar way that I interact with stuff from like Harvey Pekar, which is, American indie comics, comic books, autobio, memoir type of stuff. There's a great movie with Paul Giamatti, American Splendor, about his life, and then that was the name of the comic as well. And in the sense that it's someone who is like, has a passion and a love for the medium, but is also kind of playing by his own rules. He's not necessarily following traditional structure or traditional sort of approaches. You can see the influences that are there, and they maybe come from different places than what their peers are influenced by. Like there's a brand to it and a style that you can tell is like off kilter, but not in a surreal or weird way, but just in a way where you're like, oh, you're like on a different tempo. Like you're on a different time signature than the other people around you in terms of how you're approaching filmmaking, how you're approaching storytelling. And that can be, I think for anyone, but for me too, that can be something that's maybe a coin toss depending on how well it resonates with you. But for whatever reason, for Fessenden, for people like Picard, I'm drawn to it. And the more I interact with it, the more I'm able to kind of tune into that frequency in a way that maybe is harder for me at first. So that element, that DNA was here for sure for me. And there's a ton about this. I would say the vast majority. I definitely liked it. But I could also at the same time see like, okay, this is an unrefined, relatively speaking, Larry Fessenden. Like this is him earlier on. I mean, even down to the fact that he's like the full central lead, which is something that he doesn't really ever do again, as far as I'm aware. From what the little bit that I read, there's a pamphlet sort of booklet thing that comes with the box set that has an essay written by Michael Gingold, who was very heavily involved with, I believe, Fangoria. And you could tell in that sort of essay that has a lot of respect for Fessenden, big fan of his work and everything. And they talk about a bit of it in there about Habit specifically, that Fessenden was pulling on his own like very personal experiences with alcoholism, and I don't know beyond that, but I know at the very least alcohol abuse, alcohol issues, and that's very clear in that feels like a through line in the movie for sure. But he's an alcoholic. He's a dude he's constantly drinking. He's constantly involved with that, and it's other characters are commenting on it and making observations about it as well. Weirdly enough, I didn't get too wrapped up in the is this real, is it not? I think I just bought in the whole time that it was that there was a fucking vampire in the movie. But I also can see, looking back on it now too, like if you were somebody who was watching it as more of like this is a metaphor, then I think that it's, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't take a magnifying glass to it. I don't think it's that kind of movie where he's trying to be very careful and exacting and never breaking any kind of rules or whatever. I think there's plenty of ambiguity there to wade your way through and kind of figure out what you think. But I do think that there's plenty there that he set up to make it seem more like, that she's not real, or she's not real in this sense. Maybe she is a real person, but it's somebody who is not a vampire. It's just somebody who is enabling him or helping him kind of downward spiral even more than he might already be struggling. It took me a little bit to snap into some of those frequencies I mentioned in terms of the acting, in terms of the writing, in terms of the cinematography, all stuff you guys mentioned. I think within 15, 20 minutes, I was pretty locked in, and I was like, there's definitely, I've never lived in New York. I've been there a handful of times for work or a school trip one time in high school. So I don't have a lot of, but you hear people talk about that all the time, especially New York natives who are like, this is what the city was like in this era, and this is what this neighborhood was like then, and how that changes over the years. And you see, most of my experience or knowledge in that area is going to come from filmmaking and from different filmmakers, capturing the city at that point in time. And this, to me, at least, felt very real. Like it felt very much like it was a guy with a camera shooting in his neighborhood and buildings at the time. This isn't or at least it doesn't feel like film set situations and sound state. Like it's just real shit. Like you said, there's plenty of times in the movie where you are you guys still there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. My screen went to sleep, and I thought that it cut the connection off. My bad. There's plenty of times in the movie, like that one you mentioned with them on the highway, the freeway, even down to there's a shot where he's helping his ex-girlfriend move, and a bunch of paint cans fall out of the back of the truck. And even in that moment, I was like, oh, they just fucking spilled paint all over the ground. Like you could tell that there's no. There probably wasn't any sort of like union or crews or whatever. It's just them out there doing it, and that obviously holds a huge appeal for me. That DIY filmmaking sort of aesthetic and style. So yeah, there was tons here that pulled me in and kept me in, but at the same time, I also can see all the stuff that you guys are saying, and I don't really disagree with any of it. I think narratively speaking, it's not as satisfying as a traditional movie, but even for his films, of the ones I've seen, he's making things stretch a little bit more. You can tell it's a younger filmmaker who is interested in like, well, I want to have this shot in the movie because it evokes this feeling, or this is me speculating on his intentions, obviously, but maybe the shot is to evoke this feeling, or the shot is to provide a lack of clarity in the viewer or the audience, whatever else. Whereas I feel like an older Fessenden would see some of the shots and be like, we don't need this shit, cut that out. There's an economy of space, editing time, whatever you want to call it, that I don't think is quite there yet. There's a similar phenomenon we mentioned in Thesis when we talked about that a few weeks back, where I'm blanking on his last name now. All I can think of is Almodovar, which is another guy, right?
Alejandro
Amenabar, where it's a young guy with a lot of energy and creative enthusiasm that's ready to do weird shit and ready to do stuff that's maybe not weird's the wrong word, but ready to do stuff that's beyond what is expected or what would be required of the scene. It's similar energy there, but I think especially when it's your first thing, it's your early thing. If I had to guess, the first cut of this movie was probably 4 fucking hours long. Like, there's a lot of similarities you see with young filmmakers, and they're like, you realize like, oh, this is a movie that should have been probably 80 minutes, but the first cut was 4 hours, and they got it down to 112 or whatever. Yeah. So it's got all of those sort of, I think, trappings. But for me at least, the atmosphere is a big part. It is fucking drenched in 90s New York, city, public transportation, just everything about it feels so lived in and real. I think Fessenden's pretty great in it. I've always liked him as an actor. He has something that, again, much like every other thing that I've described about him, is kind of a different frequency. He's got a unique, weird, offbeat look. I have a picture on my Instagram when I met him. He looks just like this dude, but older. Yep. He's had the same look forever. And there's to me at least, I don't know him personally, so I don't want to like praise him too much and that it turns out he's a maniac or something, but he's always seemed very genuine, always seemed very much like, you hear other filmmakers and horror fans and people within the industry that have been mentored by him really speak highly of him, and respect him quite a bit, put him in their films and everything else. So, he's somebody who I've developed definitely an interest in and an affinity for, because he is within the industry but kind of doing his own thing, and that's rare in any medium, I think, when it's truly being able to carve out your niche. I mentioned at the top of the segment too, like Glass Eye Pix, the amount of movies they've put out, but then Tales from Beyond the Pale, and just kind of championing horror in general, I think is all pretty awesome and admirable. So yeah, to me it's a split between genuinely enjoying going back and watching this filmmaker who I really like and admire, and seeing an early thing from him that kind of put him on the map, knowing it's got some rough edges and flaws or whatever else, and then the other aspect being exactly what Andi, you mentioned, historical sort of document kind of thing, where it's like, okay, I've seen Habit now, like I know what exactly what that vibe is, how it fits in, what it's like, yeah. I
mean, you know what era it is because everyone's got a cigarette in their mouth. Which is just not something that you see in movies now, and
the acting, you guys mentioned this. It's weird. There's a similar. It's so crazy how they're in totally different places. Maybe not totally. One's Jersey and one's New York, but so they're close-ish in proximity, but totally different vibe, crews, everything. And there's a weird familiarity with Clerks for me, with this era of acting and look, where it's like, these kids were all in the same film schools, or like were influenced by the same stuff right at the same times, that it's like even sometimes in their deliveries or the way that they are non-verbally acting, there's a similar element there that I always feel like I notice in most of the cast of Clerks. Like, and I love that movie. I've watched it a million times. Like, I like the acting in that movie. But I remember even the first time I saw it feeling that, where it's like, oh, these are obviously not professional actors yet, and there's moments where they say something that doesn't sound natural, but then there's also something about the performance as a whole that does kind of feel real and works in a way. And it's like, is that because I'm decades removed from it, and so I don't have like I'm not plugged in a way that would allow, I don't know what it is, but it is interesting how multiple times I was just like, oh, this is the same era. Like, it's the exact same time and totally different vibe, but reminded me of that a bit.
So I want to go back to, and I know this isn't going to be the topic of great interest for all of us, but I did want to just revisit it again because Andy's got my brain whirring away now. And because I 100% was like, oh no, this is happening. This is, she's absolutely real. And like the main reason for thinking that was that there were enough scenes where she's interacting with other people that I was like, well, this person actually exists, unless he's having a mass psychosis where he's inventing interactions between his friends and his new girlfriend, who is just the embodiment of his addiction to whatever it is, that I suppose alcohol in this instance. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, he could have been having a mass psychosis. People keep saying, "You all right? You look like you're ill." Like he could very well be making up massive portions of his waking hours just to make the idea of Anna fit into it. But it's still kind of, for me personally, it kind of makes more sense, and maybe it's just because I love the idea of there being a vampire in the world there. It just kind of works for me that she was a real person, especially because it's not just his friends where those interactions take place, but it's also like when he goes to that society thing to memorialize his dad, and he's giving a speech, and then she turns up afterwards and she takes this thing out of her pocket and she shows it around, and all of these rich old dudes are like, "Oh my God, look at the things. It's so old, so lovely, so nice, so rare." And she's like, "You can't touch it. It's for him." And I'm just like, okay, so the thing is, he could be having a psychotic episode again. But then there's the message on the answer phone where it's like that woman that, and that was completely unresolved and really frustrating for me, because it's Mr. Lyons, whatever his name was. He phones up and he leaves a message, and it's basically something like, "I need to tell you something about the woman that was at the memorial tonight." And I was fully expecting to find out, and maybe this is something that got left on the floor when that 4-hour movie was cut to 2. Maybe I was expecting that he was going to reveal that he'd met that woman before and she was on the arm of his father, because she bursts into the father's apartment, and as far as I'm aware, he's never invited her in, so she must already have a pre-existing invite, if she is a vampire. So, then I'm like, okay, so that, like, thematically that works. Like, from a storytelling point of view, she killed the father and now she's after the son as well. So I don't know, like for me, I like the idea of it being a vampire story, but I dig the idea that essentially he was so troubled and so fucked up with the loss of his father and his increasing reliance on alcohol, that he was essentially just experiencing one psychosis after another throughout the day, inventing large portions of his lived experience, and then eventually it got the better of him and he jumped out of a window. Like, that absolutely works for me. So yeah, now I have to watch the movie with that frame of mind, I guess. I don't know, it's Andy, you're going to say something?
Yeah, because I have more thoughts about what you just said.
Oh, go! Yeah, absolutely.
I never meant to say that she possibly hadn't been there at all during the whole movie.
No, this is where I'm wondering.
She could still be there all the time, but not at the end, maybe. Maybe she didn't show up at his apartment and he jumped out of the window, but she was there for the rest of everything. Because I thought about that as well, because she interacts with so many people that it wouldn't really make sense that she is only in his head.
Yeah.
But then, of course, there's still the question, she could be a vampire. She doesn't necessarily have to be a vampire. Both could be true. And there's also the fact that it could just be inconsistency in the writing. It's not like we're talking about a master script writer.
Well, not
70
at this point, maybe.
Years into his career. Maybe it's just, I want to have this cool, weird twist at the end that people can argue about. Doesn't necessarily have to be consistent with the rest of the movie. I don't know.
Well, because then I'm just remembering now, like at the very end of the movie, you see the bow of a ship pushing through the waves, like almost suggesting that, there she is on her getaway. Like she lives on, and now she's moving on to her next target.
If I remember correctly, it's how the movie starts as well, with that ferry.
I missed that. Yeah.
By the
it's also
by the Statue of Liberty. So it is a possible interpretation that we see her arriving on that boat. You see her leaving on that boat. That's a Dracula thing. Vampire arriving on boats.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah, that's what I thought of, was the Demeter. And then also his friend that he works with at the bar. He talks about how a girl took him back to a boat.
Yeah,
yeah,
and then he has almost like a vision of her on the boat.
He disappears
for some reason. He just wanted to have an excuse to run around naked a lot. Fair play to him, like no Willy sock in this movie.
I completely forgot to, and I just now did last night or night before when I watched the movie. I saw in the Wikipedia article there was a little snippet that Roger Ebert had done a review, and I've mentioned Roger Ebert on the show a ton. Obviously, everybody knows who he is, but for me in particular, growing up, I read his reviews constantly from, I don't know, early teens up through when he died, probably. And especially in that era when I was wanting to make movies for a living and was studying that shit, like I was just inhaling everything Ebert was throwing out there, books, reviews, everything. So I pulled up his review for Habit, and he talks very specifically about this. The last two little paragraphs of the review. It's not a long review, but it's just interesting how it's tied into also our podcast and things we've talked about. So I'll just read really quickly the end of it. He says, quote, "I've been receiving a lot of mail lately from those who feel I need to have David Lynch's Lost Highway explained to me. Their explanations are invariably detailed and serenely confident, even though none of them agree. One correspondent, who has obviously never read a single one of my reviews except for Lost Highway, lectured me that I should be more open to the experimental and not limit myself to praising formula films. I wrote to him privately in colorful detail. Publicly, to him and his kind, I recommend Habit, which in the subtlety of its ambiguity reveals Lost Highway as an exercise in search of a purpose. Fessenden, who wrote, directed, acted, and edited this film, is a talent to watch. That he is able to see himself with such objectivity is almost frightening. There's not a shred of ego in his performance. Wandering about the streets, coat flapping open, aimless, sad, drinking without even remembering why, his Sam is an ideal vampire's victim because he takes so long to catch on. But then, of course, perhaps that's because there is no such thing as a vampire." That's the end of the review.
That's
which I thought was pretty great.
Really good paragraph.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's from that perspective, a critic writing a review for the movie in 1997. I think just as relevant of a topic there too. So I didn't think about this stuff really at all. In terms of whether she was real or not. I think I saw the addiction stuff for sure. And man, I'll tell you another part that I really liked about this movie, and it was another one of those. I feel like I bring one of these up every week these days, but it is just one of the things that resonates with me in filmmaking and the storytelling so much. Is there didn't have to be a level of stuff about his dad in this, but I enjoyed it a lot. Like I felt like it gave him another. I mean, you could make the argument that it's also what inflated the runtime, so maybe it should have been cut. But the scene in particular where he's giving that speech and he's just nervous and messed up, and all these older guys at this organization, business club, whatever it is. Do they say? I don't remember now. What
don't
it was
think they do. I'm assuming it's some kind of stonemasons or gentlemen's club, except there are women there, so it's more likely to be a general thing like a stonemasons. I don't know.
Yeah. It's clear that like it's a world he does not fit into, and based off of his conversations with other characters, and even his sort of like eulogy that he's giving, did not connect with his dad. But yeah, there was a level of writing and acting there that I was like, oh shit, this is like coming at this and adding depth and stuff in a way that's not, at least seemingly not directly connected to the A plot. But yeah, I dug that stuff. I thought it was good. I think Fessenden, it's so weird seeing him in a main role, because he's always kind of, anytime you see him pop up on other stuff, he is like at most a like secondary, tertiary character. Secondary might even be a stretch. I feel like anything I've seen him in, he's almost always like, the friend's uncle or something like that. It's always that level of being removed. But I thought he carried this pretty well.
He did.
I liked him as the lead.
He was the best actor in the thing.
He absolutely was. Yeah. He's a very unconventional leading man. And as someone who would absolutely also find themselves in that particular mold of very unconventional leading men, like he's just, because his like, and I'm not saying this to slag him off. It's an observation which I think most people will immediately recognize as being true of him. Like his facial proportions are quite different from what you would expect from like he's not a Tom Cruise, right? Like he's
close to Jack Nicholson, I thought.
Yeah,
wispy hair.
At times I thought he was channeling Jack Nicholson in his performance, actually. but yeah, like the hairline, the galaxy brain size forehead, you could almost call it a 5 head. I love you, Larry.
I guess I always assumed, I didn't know until watching this movie that his teeth have been that way. Like, it's mentioned in the movie.
No
like
idea.
There's a line. Yeah, I've noticed it in older roles, and I guess I always just assumed like, he lost a tooth at some point or whatever. But he has, and it may, because everything else in the movie seems like it's so rooted in being personal stuff. I did immediately wonder, like, I wonder if that's how he fucking lost his tooth. Like, he talks about it in the movie as it being and that's another thing too, like, that Ebert talks about, like, there's not a shred of ego. Like, that's something that I think most people would have, or actors in particular, would have worried about or not addressed or whatever else. And I mean, he wrote it in. Like, it's very much there. Like, in these characters, I think that was another thing he captured too. Like, it doesn't feel, or at least to me, it didn't feel like a romantic movie. Like, I wasn't like pulled into because it's still very much like a lot of, not desperate sex, but like it doesn't feel, it's not supposed to feel,
I know what you mean,
emotionally fulfilling or wholesome.
Yeah.
Like, it's
a lot more 9.5 weeks than insert random romantic movie that I can't think of because I don't watch those kind of movies.
Humping on the ground and like knocking shit over, kind of. Yeah. But the scenes where they're then before and after that where they're talking, I felt like set up so much of the overall like vibe and atmosphere. Like, again, it felt, kind of just very vulnerable and open. Like, you have these two actors that are like maybe sitting in a bath naked together, and there's you can definitely feel when there's a detached sort of like we're aiming for realism as opposed to how we portray these sorts of acts in films typically.
Yeah, like
which again is just an extension of the grittiness of the movie.
That bath scene again, yeah, like you say, bath scenes normally would be portrayed as very sensual, very sexual, right? And
shoot from the shoulders up,
and but no, this bath scene was very matter of fact, very perfunctory. Like, look, I'm on my period, I'm not going to get pregnant. Also, vampire, not going to get pregnant because we've already talked about that kind of shit. But still, like it took the idea of the bath scene in a sexually charged movie, and it kind of flipped it 180. It was exactly not what you expected it to be. It was basically, look, I'm on my period, now we're going to get washed. And that was it. There wasn't really much else going on in that scene.
And that, like, easy sort of intimacy that they have on screen and just with each other, both like as the actors, but their characters too. Like, there's that to me was where a lot of the connection stuff was more built. I mean, I think there's definitely more. I was talking to somebody about it right after I finished watching it, and I was like, it is a movie I recognize, similar to what Andi said, like, I recognize and appreciate and respect for all these specific reasons for like DIY filmmaking stuff, or just the aesthetic and the grime and everything, all that stuff. But then also there is enough here that I'm like, I feel like I'll get more out of it watching it a second time. It's not a movie I'm dying to rewatch right now, but it is one that like I'm going to keep that box set, and I'll 100% years down the line rewatch this. And I would imagine similarly to how I was with Chronos, how I've been with other, maybe like Aronofsky's Pi. I'm just trying to think of other random like early entry movie kind of things where I'll get more out of it, later down the line. But I think there is enough there for sure with a lot of the things here, while it still is, maybe less refined than what he does later. It's also not 1,000 pages long like Until Dawn, so he at least was restrained in that way. I feel like we're done. Do we have any other big thoughts on this before we start doing double feature picks?
No, one more thing that connects to double feature picks. Maybe it is one of your double feature picks because it's not mine because I have not seen it. Okay. But I was close to watching Abel Ferrara's The Addiction 1995 New York vampire independent movie.
Yep.
I mean, it has the addiction in the title. It's the same era. It's the same city, and half an hour shorter.
Yeah.
Whereas Habit is 1:52, an hour 52. The Addiction is an hour 22. And I was close to following Habit because I watched Habit this morning. I was close to following it with The Addiction just to have the comparison and to maybe be able to pick it as a double feature pick and see if it would make sense. I'm pretty sure it would make sense as a double feature, but as I have not seen it, I'm not picking it. There's another one that immediately came to mind by a New York filmmaker that I'm also not going to pick. I'm curious if one of you will take it. I'm picking Martin, 1977, George A. Romero, independent vampire movie. So 20 years before Habit. A movie that I've seen once and also didn't find that compelling. But I want to rewatch it actually at some point. I think we should do it at some point on the podcast.
Yeah, I would like to as well.
But yeah, independent vampire thing, Martin, 1977.
Nice. I'll go next just because I've already said mine. I'm going to go with Chronos. Another, I mean, the similarities I think are too close to. It's also a vampirism film done in a sort of non-traditional way. Chronos has this device, this cool ass scarab, like a mechanical thing, and similarly where you're like, okay, we're dealing with somebody who we don't typically see as a protagonist of these vampire stories, and doing, exploring different metaphors. And that one, I think, also with aging and being an elderly guy and the differences that brings to the table. Very early film from their filmography, shot for cheap, blah blah blah. And huge fan of Chronos. It's one of my favorite Del Toro movies for sure, but it did not start out that way. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, okay, I get it. This is old and cheap and is not like Hellboy, which was my frame of reference at the time as a teenager. But in the years since then, have become a huge fan. So throw that out there. Also with a cover by Mike Mignola on the Criterion edition. Dave?
Yeah. I'm not going for one by a New York filmmaker, so I'd be interested to know which film that was, and we'll find out in a second. But I'm going for a movie which is from a filmmaker who was born in OH!IO. Yeah, it doesn't work when you do it yourself. So it's Jim Jarmusch's Only Lovers Left Alive from 2013.
Man, I recommended this to someone yesterday because of this movie. I was talking to them about Habit, and then literally, so the next day, so yesterday, I sent her a text again and was like, by the way, have you seen Only Lovers Left Alive and What We Do in the Shadows? Because those are both great. Also very different.
Very different.
But yeah, Only Lovers Left Alive is so good.
Yeah, and I've got really no reason for picking it other than it contains vampires and there is a addiction storyline that runs through it with John Hurt's character. So other than that, literally no real reason to recommend it other than it's a great movie and people should watch it. And
I would say non-traditional vampire story for sure. Yeah,
I mean, I'm glad that
it makes total sense.
I'm glad that you mentioned that you actually brought it up to a friend the other day in connection to this, because it makes me feel like something in my head isn't completely broken. So yeah, no, I would definitely go for that. Now, Andy, I need to know because it's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah, me too.
What's this movie that you thought one of us might have picked?
So I very much categorized Jim Jarmusch as a New York filmmaker. So it was that
I was
movie.
right. Fuck me. Holy shit. No, I when you said it, I went to Wikipedia and I looked it up to see whether it was him. And when it said he was born
he might
in
not
Ohio,
have been born there.
No, I mean he definitely
he studied film there. He made his movies
sure.
there. So when I watched Habit, I very much thought of early Jim Jarmusch movies. And that, as I said, I'm not as familiar with early Spike Lee. He's of course a very New York filmmaker making movies around the same time, but I haven't seen much of his work at all, and especially not his early movies. But Jim Jarmusch movies I have seen, and so Only Lovers Left Alive was a perfect choice.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Also, I haven't seen it, but the zombie movie he made, The
it's
Dead
great.
Don't Die.
Yes.
Larry Fessenden's in it, so there's another connection.
Of course, yes.
Yep. I don't think he's like as always, I don't think he's like a main character. He's like a shop owner or a cop or something, but...
I don't remember what he... I've seen the film. I don't remember him being in it, which means he was probably in it as a side character. But it's been a while since I've seen it, and honestly, I should probably rewatch it because I really enjoyed that film, and I recommend it highly to you, David.
I want to see it. Yeah, you're talking about The Dead Don't Die.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I really do want to see it. I think when the trailers came out, I was like, oh man, I'm so on board for this. It looks like very weird and like Jarmusch having fun on a level that you don't see. I don't want to say he doesn't have fun, but you know what I mean. It's not his normal kind of tone. And then when the trailers came out, I remember, or not the trailers, the reviews came out that were kind of mixed, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll wait. It was one of those where it wasn't off my radar, but it wasn't until people I knew had started to see it, and so I'm sure it was floating back on there because of you. Have you seen it, Andi? I can't remember now.
No, I have not.
Oh, I recommend it to both of you then.
There you go.
Yeah. I missed my chance when it was on Netflix. It's not on Netflix anymore in Germany. And
okay. There we go. Alrighty. Well, listeners, let us know if you have watched Habit. I'm going to guess no, because it seems like most people haven't. But if you did, send us an email if you'd like, eerieinternational@gmail.com. If you have any thoughts on Larry Fessenden in general, I know I would love to hear them. I'm sure the boys would as well. I'm just referring to us as the boys now. So feel free to send us some thoughts if you'd like. I believe next week we have an episode. Yes, right? Yes.
We're recording. We don't have a topic yet.
We don't have a topic yet. We will be recording. That's the plan as of now. The week after that, so the first week of June, we likely will be taking a week off. And then it'll be up to Dave. Dave will be the only one who can record, so it's up to you, Dave, if you want to do it.
If anyone wants to hear an hour of me whittering on about Arsenal being Premier League champions for the first time in 22 years, we can totally do that. Potentially even European champions at that point.
And then after that, we have a series which we won't mention yet. We'll wait till next week's episode to announce that, just so it's a little bit closer, since we're skipping a week before that as well. But very excited about that coming up too. So tune in next week when we talk about whatever that is, along with the announcement. Stay safe out there. Keep watching horror movies, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Good boo.